Everyone, if I could get your attention, please, real quick. We have 5 tables, 5 table leaders. At the end of it, they're gonna guide you through a discussion that is kind of an extension of the one that we've been having today. If I'm not 100% sure how the tables are numbered here, so I'm gonna ask. Is this table 1? Okay, 4. Okay, so table 1, the table lead is Doug Johnson. And it's going to be the topic is AI mission critical data, how AI is shaping data modernization strategies. So you can choose your table, your topic, assuming there's enough seats and all that whatnot. Table 2 is John Crossno. John is going to be leading a conversation on security and compliance risks, mitigating vulnerabilities in AI-driven environments. Table 3 is Kevin Hansen, and he's going to be guiding a conversation on lessons from the private sector, what government can learn from industry innovation. Table 4, we've got Steve Roberts on DevSecOps, modernizing and managing mission-critical applications securely and efficiently with fewer resources. And finally, last but not least, we have Table 5 and Mac Gupta, and he's going to be leading a conversation on building a future-ready data strategy, protecting, optimizing, and extending modernization efforts. So you can have your pick, you could stay where you are, and then what we're going to do is have a conversation until, what was it, 10:30, and then at 10:30 what we're going to do is a designee or maybe the table leader, your table decide how you want to do that. We'll get up and kind of share lessons learned, or 2 to 3 minutes of like these were the big pictures and the highlights of the conversation that we had. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your conversations.
I'm just going to do a brief summary of what we were talking about AI and mission-critical data. So we had a conversation around mission-critical data systems. There were different agencies kind of represented in interests, but there were kind of conversations around this interest around centralizing data versus kind of edge, and I think you were kind of bringing this up in some of our Q&A earlier. There's some kind of tension there around autonomy, but yet centralization. The pace of change is a real challenge, and the skills, budget, and then the technology between kind of modern and existing systems is a real tension point. And so those were some of the things around kind of mission-critical data systems. And then in the topic of around kind of this hybrid IT environments, which is related but slightly different, there were conversations around challenges around compliance issues. We've, of course, talked about many of these here. And then there was also some tensions, again, around the budgets, both in terms of commitment for sustainability of budget. Like, maybe you get something now, but is it going to sustain? And it kind of becomes a challenge. But also this idea of the autonomy that organizations had. There's now a new line item in your budget around this kind of modernization, and is it really going to be sustained? And then we got into a discussion around what does success look like in the data modernization strategy. And we really shared 2 areas. One was funding, and then the second one was around clear goals around outcomes. Now, there's probably many other elements to that, but we just kind of ran out of time. We started to discuss that, but we moved forward. I'm sure there's other parts of that strategy that we could amplify, but if you start with the budget and the target outcomes, many good things can happen. And then we had a chance to kind of talk about the agency's approach to AI capabilities. And there was this kind of assumption in the question around migrating data. But it was interesting that the group really said, we really want to find strategies for making data available, not just migrating. Because the agencies have a lot of data. They want to share it. They want to make it available. But that was kind of a conversation that was had. Incorporating, and then there was kind of a conversation around incorporating the right AI for your data was the conversation that we had. And we had good discussions around security, accuracy, and efficiency, and some tensions that exist there. And then lastly, we had this conversation around the long-term strategy. And I'll just kind of say that we said kind of, the question was really around what's working and what are some opportunities there. And we said we're seeing a crack in the budgets area. And we kind of put it in quotes. We're starting to have conversations about the budget, but we're not there yet. That was one conversation that we had. And there was a conversation that said that there is a significant opportunity. And at the same time, there's some guidance needed from leadership and consistency. And really leading to that desire to the access to information. So those were some of the summaries that we had there. We think there absolutely is opportunity in this AI and mission-critical data, but that was kind of a summary of everything from budgets to the outcomes that we're kind of looking for. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. All right. And table lead.
Hi, yeah. So our table, we were focusing on security and compliance risks and mitigating vulnerabilities in AI-driven environments. So we really started talking about what it would take, right? What are the first steps that an agency really should take to build real resilience? A lot of times you do something, you check a box, say we're in compliance, right? And so we really looked at what it should take, and it's really understanding the architecture in general, your network architecture, and really understanding what that is, and then defining your priorities, which is typically going to be starting with what your more critical systems are. You can't do it all, so start small and work your way through, right? Starting with what's critical. And then we looked at the biggest gaps, right? Everybody has gaps in their systems. And so what are the gaps in strategies today when it comes to securing complex environments, right? Like hybrid cloud and AI-powered systems. Visibility is a big gap. Visibility seems to be a big gap, not just in federal agencies, but just across the industry in general. And then data orchestration in the hybrid cloud environments. One of the things that came out was vulnerabilities in software, right? In vendor software, vulnerabilities that can be exploited. And those exploitations can let you take over command and control of systems, give you access to data that you otherwise wouldn't have access to, bypassing other security rules. And then one of the scariest things there in the gaps around the vulnerabilities isn't as much that they steal the data, well, that's on there, is that they might change the data. When you think in terms of, from a federal agency standpoint, somebody could be going in and changing the data so that what's coming out right in the systems on the other end is fake information, right? Bad information. And then around encrypting the data, well, encrypting it is important, right? What level of encryption and when is it encrypted and decrypted, right? And what type of data? Because the process for encryption and decryption can be expensive. And thus the time it takes to do that, right, when you're going through millions of rows in a database, could slow things down, could be costly. So what and when and how and where you encrypt things becomes important. And that's also a gap in understanding that. And then we talked about the kind of reactive posture, right? Cybersecurity posture versus predictive. And across the board, the answer was we're probably more reactive still than we are predictive. And so a lot of it is using AI to collect the information you need to become predictive, right? Getting into more predictive analytics. But it's also budgets. Budgets are finite. And the cyber groups, they have bigger horror stories to tell, right? To get more money. Whereas the data guys don't always have the same kind of stories to tell to get the money. So the cyber guys supposedly get all the money. But the biggest problem there is silos. people are working in silos. So you've got the cyber people over here, you got the data people over here. At the end of the day, they got to protect the data, right? Protect the systems and protect the data. But they're working in silos instead of working together. So there needs to be a lot more synergy across those silos, right? And working together with one goal and purpose in mind there. Zero Trust can help drive this and drive those discussions. And then the last thing we talked about was Zero Trust and how should agency leaders think about implementing Zero Trust. And really it's baselining, and AI can be used to help with the baselining. AI can help lower that aperture and determine where attacks might come from, right? Maybe not are they nation state actors, but also into your systems. And then you get into pen testing, right? You have red teams, blue teams, purple teams. And AI can help in all those cases, right? It can help from a pen testing standpoint with the red teams, helping with the attack. And it can help the cyber guys that are the blue teams, right? Defending against them. The biggest problem with the blue teams, the cyber guys, is they come in out of college, right? Younger folks, and they get some experience, and what happens? Somebody offers them twice as much money and they leave, right? So AI becomes a lot more important to get to the kind of the predictive analytics, right? Help preventing some of the cyber attacks. So that's as far as we got, and I'll turn it back to you the next one.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, so our table was focused on lessons from the private sector, what government can learn from industry innovation. And we really came around on a couple different topics. One was the rate of change, accelerating the pace of change. Something obviously the private sector is very good at. So how can we leverage, those use cases in the government and accelerating, agile methodologies and helping increase that rate of change. One great example was given around Zero Trust, how they've seen a lot of success around agile methodologies, but Zero Trust comes along and suddenly it's slowing down your workers. There's more security involved, so the processes change, and in the end, it's slowing down the mission. So how can private sector help with the adoption of Zero Trust and not impact, have these change impacts on the mission? Then the other thing that came up was around efficiencies. In the private sector, asset management, process modernization are very key and fundamental to driving those efficiencies, having the visibility where everything is at, so that you can get rid of redundancy, drive down costs, drive up efficiencies around enterprise services, enterprise offerings, to help with efficiency primarily. So that's about where we left it. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, hi. My name's Steve Roberts, MFGS Inc. So our group was the DevSecOps. Just hang on. Can you hear me? Probably don't even need it. My voice carries so well. We had a really good diverse group here. So one of the questions was, how can organizations, modernize high-value IT applications and processes without disrupting mission-critical operations? And basically, it came down to, how are you going to manage the applications? You can retire them, refactor, rehost, and that's something that is, to get risk. And where is your risk profile? And how does AI go ahead and contribute to the success of those, particularly, in this age of large language models? And we had different opinions and different experiences. Some with small teams in the government, and see a recoil actually in the effects of budgets and staffing power, and in fact taking from those opportunities of leveraging AI. In fact, going back to a more of a siloed type of and then we had a group from marketing, management, and how to go ahead and position that for the developers and to get the message out and to really what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. We talked about how DevSecOps played a role in that. Static code analysis of your software and dynamic code analysis, and how AI is being used to go ahead and streamline those, understanding the CVEs involved in your legacy applications. Basically, again, it was talked about how things are very ironically getting more siloed because of reduction in the assets and in the capabilities to this day and age. We talked about when you're modernizing and opening it up to how is that taking in effect using Kubernetes and that technology. Again, we had a person here that was hands-on in doing this, and also staffing people, and how this is an opportunity, and how large language models can go ahead and facilitate that. Our second to last question was how the high-valued government and modernizations improve performance and make things more efficient. So we asked that question directly. Again, what I found, what was interesting, that AI is eliminating, some of the, expensive employee COBOL people, and then we knew that, but also due to budgets and staffing, they're kind of moving back in time in a ways to mitigate risk. So where you think they're going to use AI, they're actually recoiling and going back to spreadsheets. There are some outlier situations, and that's probably more of an outlier situation, or at least we hope it is, or else the whole initiative is backfiring. And finally, we didn't get a whole lot of time here, but this is with contracting and agile type of contracting. It was talked about how GSA has been working on an initiative to do procurements very efficiently using AI. And again, this is something that was going on for many years. So we got to make sure that this continues, and there's budgeting that can continue this. So we're having the need, but we don't want to undercut ourselves in the effect of doing this. So there's a lot of opportunity for that.
Thanks, Cody. We were focused more on data modernization strategies, and we spent a lot of time on question 1. And we got to question 2 by the end. So obviously, I think that was a common theme, that we ran out of time. We could have talked for another hour or 2. But the way I structured the update first of all, thank you. Thank you, everyone on my team. I think everyone brought a very unique perspective. Was around what some of the problems we are discussing, and that kind of builds on top of some of the things that have been already said around siloed nature of programs and/or data sources, disparate data sources, inconsistency in data sets, and also even once you have brought those data sets together, how do you keep track of changes and make sure that things don't break? And it was asserted, on our table at least, that some of these things are just impossible to do without AI. But then funding, like someone said, became an issue in AI tools, and lack of just awareness of what AI capabilities are out there and what it can do for you. became part of the problem. We started talking about what great looks like and what some of the solutions might be. Basically, at the end of the day, everyone seemed to agree that governance is key. It's a challenge as to how you roll out governance or an opportunity. It could be done top-down, bottoms up, but in the end, we said it's really east-west. One of my colleagues kind of brought that in the picture instead of north-south. So east-west cuts across multiple functions, work streams, programs. So that was part of it. And then just defining what problem we are solving. I think a couple of other teams also brought that up, and we also thought having a clear objective in mind brings all efforts together and focuses them. And then we started thinking about the impact of all of this, right? So one was AI and data and combination and modernization strategies and being future ready, which was our topic. Really, it leads to accelerated autonomy. Essentially, AI acting as an intern for you, and it gives you the ability to, and in a way empowers you to focus on more high leverage capabilities once you have captured that knowledge, algorithm, model, and made it available. And then in turn, that helps you democratize access to the intelligence that you have captured. And it's important to think about how it's delivered ultimately to either within the agencies, to program office, the project officers, or even to citizens in a human-centered way, which would be something like a chat, using natural language interface, those kinds of things. So that's I think the gist of what we covered in our discussion. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here today. I really do. On behalf of ICIT, I'm always remiss if I don't do a couple things. One, I'm a recovering trial attorney, and I've got a microphone. So I will, you always do a couple things. You tell people what you're going to say, you say it, and then you remind them what they heard, right? So we're at the part where we remind you what you heard. Goals for this event was to learn some of the challenges that the government was having with AI, modernization, doing it securely, prioritizing. I think we did that. The next big piece of that was chatting with your peers, growing your community, and I hope everybody got a chance to do that. This was a great venue, a great opportunity to be able to share, to learn, to grow together. And again, ICIT, our mission. We're dedicated to securing, modernizing, and making resilient critical infrastructure that provides for foundational needs. We can't do that mission without our partners in our community. So our partners would like to thank them today. So one, the Cyber Risk Alliance. The Cyber Risk Alliance is a strategic partner of ICIT, and that they amplify everything that we do. And then for MFGS Inc., thank you for making this event possible, as well as for Rocket Software. And then finally, thanks to all of you. So in where you began, thank you for being here, for investing your time. Have a wonderful day. Hope you're able to enjoy this weather. Thank you for being here. Cheers.